Hi, I'm Nina Melendez, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, a show about the world of work and our place in it. Negotiation is part of our everyday life, and many of us go about it the way we understand it to be, haggling for a better deal of a thing, hoping to pay less or earn more, starting at an arbitrary number that immediately puts one person at a disadvantage. But my next guest has a method that gets you out of that traditional framework of negotiation, and he used it to sell not one, but three of his companies to leading brands. It can also be used for less high-stakes contracts like not paying more than what is fair for your company domain name. Joining me now is Barry Nalebuff. He is a professor at the Yale School of Management and author of the book, Split the Pie, A Radical New Way to Negotiate. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's co-founder of Honest Tea, Kombucha, and Real Made Foods. He received his undergraduate degree from MIT, his PhD from the University of Oxford, and was a junior fellow at Harvard University. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on Pi Day. How can you beat that?
On Pi Day, I know, I did it on purpose. I want to start with, I read your book and I love it.
Thank you.
Talk about how people don't actually fully understand what it is that they are negotiating when they come to the negotiation table. Can you explain what that means, what you mean by that?
Sure. We'll get to some examples, but the basic idea of the negotiation pie is the extra value that's created by an agreement compared to what the folks would be able to do on their own with no agreement.
And when you start a negotiation, what would you say is the first step then to begin a good negotiation?
I'd like to start with ground rules. A lot of people think that they should talk first with price, throw out a high number or a low number. Other times, people think they should discuss interests rather than positions. But before any of that, I'd like to talk about how we're going to negotiate. So you could say more seriously, let's work together to create a big pie and split it. You could do it a little bit more humorously and say, can we agree that we should each act like jerks and try and take advantage of the other as best as possible and see if we can actually reach no agreement? And then when the other person says no to that, say, okay, good, I have a better idea. Can we agree to split the pie and make the pie as big as possible?
So let's talk about those ground rules and give an example now about the pie. I'm going to give a scenario, and then I want to pull up an illustration where we can walk through the different perspectives of negotiation. So here's a scenario. Pepe, a pizza maker, will give Alice Cooper and Bob Marley a 12-slice pie if they can agree on how to split it. If they can't agree, they'll still get some pizza, but with favoritism. Alice will get 4 slices, and Bob will get 2. So let's pull up this illustration to understand what we are negotiating and the different perspectives. Let's talk about the power perspective here, Barry. Dissect this for us.
So people think that Alice Cooper, whatever, Alice, is twice as strong as Bob because Alice is getting 4 slices with no deal and Bob is only getting 2. So they think that therefore Alice is twice as powerful, so dividing the 12 should be 8 versus 4. That's the power perspective.
And then the fairness perspective here, which is just straight down the middle, 6-6.
Exactly. It's like, well, there's 12 slices. Both sides should get half. That's 6 and 6. And let me say, those are the two most common perspectives, and I think they're both misguided.
How is the fairness perspective misguided?
Well, it ignores what people are getting if there's no deal. And therefore, if Alice, say, were to get 7 slices if there's no deal, she would never agree, or he would never agree to a 6-6 split. And so the fairness perspective doesn't work no matter what the numbers are for a no deal deal.
I guess it's a false sense of fairness then.
It's a false sense of fairness because it's ignoring the fact that the two parties are not in equal positions when it comes to no deal.
And then what about this split the pie, the one where Alice gets 7 and Bob gets 5? Why is this the way to do it?
Yeah. So it's going to seem so obvious, I hope, in hindsight, but really the negotiation is not over 12 slices. Alice and Bob can get 6 slices, the darker ones, with no deal. The reason they're trying to do the deal is to get the extra 6 slices in the bottom. And to get those extra 6 slices, Alice is needed just as much as Bob, and Bob is needed just as much as Alice. So I think those 6 slices get divided 3-3. That means Alice gets the 4 from no deal plus 3 or 7, and Bob gets the 2 from no deal plus 3 or 5. And that's it.
And that's, I guess, also part of why the power perspective doesn't work, because even though Bob seems to be at a disadvantage with only 2 slices, without him, there is no deal of both of them getting more.
Yep, Bob is needed every bit as much as Alice to get those extra 6 slices. And so if Alice says no, they go away. If Bob says no, they go away. You shouldn't be punishing Bob for having a worse backup when it comes to the correct negotiation over the 6 slices.
Let's talk about 2 truths in negotiation that are oftentimes overlooked and not kind of underappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
You bring them up in your book. The number one is having a poor BATNA does not put you in a weak position in the negotiation. And we just talked about this with Bob and Alice. And BATNA, by the way, is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Can you explain truth number 1 to us?
Sure. So people think that Bob is weaker than Alice because Bob has only 2 slices versus Alice having 4. And that suggests Bob's in a weaker position, so is going to get less. But not less of the negotiation pie. Yes, Bob is going to get less, 2 slices less in the end, 7 versus 5, but it's not double counting here. And people think that Bob is doubly weak. They get less because they have a lower BATNA and a smaller fraction of the negotiation pie. That second point is wrong.
And let's pull up the second negotiation truth here, which is that no matter the disparity in size of capabilities, both sides make equal contributions to the pie, which is sometimes really hard to understand.
Yeah, it looks like different sides are bringing different things to the table. But when you correctly measure the pie, it's what would be lost if there's no deal. And therefore, since you need both sides to make the deal, you need 2 hands to shake with each other. Both sides are equally essential in creating the deal. And that's why they have equal power in a negotiation.
I like that. You need 2 hands to shake. That's right. Barry, I just want to pause the conversation. I'm going to say hi to some of our members who are joining us right now. We've got Maria from New York, Roberto from Hawaii, and Deanna from Chicago. And John says, we need lots of education on negotiation here. The challenge is that there are so many sides. And Dolores says, hi, good to see you again. Dolores says, negotiation can happen in your personal and work life. Many things can be negotiated. So let's talk about that. I want to do a little mock scenario with you, Barry.
Sure.
And this was one that was in your book, Split the Pie. It is buying a website domain name. So here's a scenario for our viewers. And by the way, for those who are watching, if there are any questions that you want to ask Barry, by all means, put them in the stream. We'll get those answered. He is a negotiation guru, if you will, and he can answer all of your questions. So the scenario is, Barry, your friend just registered a company, and I saw the public information and quickly bought the domain name, knowing you're going to want to.
So my friend registered a trademark.
And
when you go to the trademark office, the registrations are public because people have to be able to object to the trademark.
Right.
And my friend, an idiot, because he tried to do this without a lawyer, basically forgot about that fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so some troll out there.
I'm going to play the role of the troll.
So we'll call her Nina. Ended up buying the domain name as soon as it became public.
Right.
And when my friend went to go and get it, it was already taken.
So I'm going to say, so in the court, I'm going to say, listen, I know you just registered your trademark. You're going to want the domain name. I am going to sell it to you for $2,500. That's my asking price.
You're a jerk. I can't believe I'm even talking to you. What kind of person are you? Oh my God, a troll. Oh, we should quit right now. This is the time to stop. Okay.
Hand over the $2,500 and you got your domain name. That's my final asking price.
Yeah, your starting point anyway. Look, Nina, besides the fact that you're a troll and I don't like you, there's this organization called ICANN, which is the domain registry. And the thing is that what you did is called registration in bad faith. So if I go to ICANN, they are surely going to give that domain name back to me. And ICANN only charges $1,300 to do this. So I'd much rather pay ICANN $1,300, and in which case you get $0, than pay you $2,500.
Okay, so you make a good point. So instead of $2,500, I'll sell it to you for $1,100.
All right. Well, now we've begun a
Because
negotiation.
it's still lower than your 13, the 13 that you
Lower
would
than my
pay ICANN.
1,300.
Yeah.
So I think there's a problem with what you've done, which is when you're offering me this for 1,100, that's a $200 savings for me.
Yeah.
But you're $1,100 ahead. And that's not fair. It would be like my offering you 200 and I'd be 1,100 ahead. And for the same reason why I wouldn't expect you to take 200, I don't think you should expect me to take 1,100.
But it's still less than what you would pay ICANN.
It is, and 200 for you is better than getting 0, which is what you'll get if you don't sell this domain name to me. My view here is the pie, in this particular case, is $1,300. You see, I'm going to get the domain name whether or not we reach an agreement. If we reach an agreement, you're going to sell it to me. And if we don't, ICANN's going to give it to me.
Right.
So the only reason we're having this negotiation is to save the $1,300 ICANN fee. And basically, I need you to save it, but you need me as well. And so therefore, unless we come to an agreement, we can't save the $1,300. So I'm prepared to split that with you, $650, $650.
So that's the 13 split evenly in 2 ways.
Exactly.
Okay, this is what I get with trying to negotiate with someone who got their PhD from Oxford, because I'm just a troll on the internet.
Yeah.
So let's end the scenario here. And by the way, how did your friend fare? How did it work out? Since this was actually,
what happens next is the real troll, who we'll call Edward because that was his name, goes to 900 and says, "That's my final number. No more." And my friend doesn't respond. And then a week later, he says, "Okay, 650." Now, there are a couple lessons that I want you to take away from this. The first is a lot of people think you should start a negotiation with a really high number, like 2,500. Soften up the other side. But you can see how it backfires here. Because what Nina had to do is go from 2,500 to 1,100 to 900. She's making all these moves. And next thing I know, I think she's just jelly. She has no backbone. So when she says it's her final number, I'm never going to believe her. In contrast, my friend had a principle. What's the negotiation really over? Let's split it, and doesn't move from that. Principle beats arbitrary.
Right, because the 2,500 was a completely arbitrary number.
It was just trying to soften up the other side.
Right.
And it didn't work. And when it didn't work, then you or Edward had to make this gigantic movement. So it actually backfired. I'd say you got sunk by your own anchor.
So when negotiating then, when you say the first part is to really establish what you are negotiating over,
correct,
then you have a principled argument, and you can both look at the same numbers equally, as opposed to some arbitrary number that.
This negotiation wasn't over 2,500. My friend could have valued the domain name at 10,000.
Right.
But in the end, that was irrelevant too, because the whole point of this was to save the $1,300 ICANN fee. And as probably many of you have guessed, that friend was me. And I have one other lesson, which is spend $12.50 beforehand and buy the domain name before you file for the trademark, and save $650 and some aggravation.
That's maybe one where the stakes are a little bit lower. What about some higher negotiations? You sold your company Honest Tea to Coca-Cola. And in that case, it was very much a David Goliath scenario, where Honest Tea was a smaller company and Coca-Cola is, of course, Coca-Cola. How did you approach it? Did you do the same sort of negotiation tactics that we were talking about here when you were talking with them?
This was the first time when the pie theory had left the classroom. I'd been teaching it at Yale to my MBAs for, 5 or 6 years. And here I was negotiating with Coke and didn't quite know what to do. And it's like, okay, let's give it a shot. And we had a problem in our negotiation, which was at the time we were about 23 million in sales. And Coca-Cola is excellent at taking companies from 100 million to 1 billion. And they're also pretty good at taking companies from 50 million down to 0. So we were too small to really fit in their network. And they agreed they'd help us over the next 3 years with production, with purchasing, with distribution. And then they'd buy us at the end of those 3 years. But there was a problem. Can you see what the problem is?
Is that you don't necessarily know what you don't know what you're going to be giving up in the future?
We don't know what we're giving up. The problem from their perspective is that they're going to help us do all these things. They don't have to pay more for all the help they're providing. In fact, that didn't seem right or fair. And my point was, it's true, we can't do things without you, but you can't do things without having the vessel of us to help. And so what we should do is have you pay full price on sales up to X. And to the extent we exceed X, you should pay half price. And that's because we couldn't have gotten sales above X without you, and you couldn't have gotten sales above X without us. We agreed on that framework in the first hour. And then we spent some time doing the data analysis of what's X and what's the fair price.
So in a situation like with the Coca-Cola negotiation, to a degree, yes, you were the David and they were the Goliath, but you knew that they absolutely wanted to incorporate tea into their roster of beverages, right?
Correct.
So you were to some small degree at an advantage because you had this thing that was really working. But then also you had competitors that they could go to. So they're like, if it doesn't work with you, look, we'll just go to one of your competitors.
They could have, but in the end, we could also have gone to a competitor. And we thought that Coca-Cola, we were right, that was the right company to do this partnership with. And they thought Honest Tea was the right company to do the partnership with. And so the extra value created by that coming together is the negotiation pie. And that's something that we can't do without them, and they can't do without us. And so that agreement to split the pie was something that made sense for both sides.
I'm going to stop again and say hi very quickly to some members. Allison from London, Deborah from Wisconsin, Zimbili from South Africa. And Randy says, the key for either side is getting the essential elements of the deal, whether now or later. So establishing, I suppose what he's saying, establishing the elements of the deal up front, as you were discussing, Barry. And Alita says, facts and details are the best tools to support negotiation. Absolutely.
I want to commend both of you. I like this idea of turning negotiation into a data analysis. And so once we've agreed to split the pie, now it's really a question of numbers and calculations and operations research or estimations, forecasting. And if you're not sure what it is now, you can always agree to split the pie as it's created. So I'm 100% with you on that approach.
So what happens, Barry, if one party cares more? Does caring more about the pie lead to getting less?
A lot of people think that's the case, but I'm not persuaded that's right. And so let me give you a semi-hypothetical version of the negotiation between Coca-Cola and Honest Tea. At the time, Honest Tea was spending 19 cents a bottle, and Coke could get the bottles for 11 cents. 100 million bottles, that's $8 million. And the question is how to split it up between the two of them. Well, Coke says, if we do it proportionately, our sales are 40 billion, yours are 20 million, that's 2001. So you get 4,000, we get 7,996,000. That doesn't seem fair. How about 1 million for you, 7 for us? And I'm saying 4 and 4. And they're saying, we're bringing our purchasing power to the table. What are you bringing? And my answer is, we're bringing our inefficiencies, or more seriously, our customers. And they say, okay, Barry, that's cute, but you're tiny. For you, $1 million is life-changing. It really matters. For us, it's not even a rounding error on a rounding error. So we'll take 7, you can have 1. And my response is, you just told me you don't care. If you don't care, we can have 7, you'll have 1 who will notice. And so that very argument that one side cares less doesn't mean they should get more. It means it's easier for them to make a sacrifice.
One thing I know that many of our viewers here on LinkedIn want to know, in addition to negotiating contracts, are things like negotiating your salary or negotiating a raise.
Sure.
In that situation, you don't necessarily have all of that data and information available. So one might not, we could say, well, I want at least a 7% raise to cover inflation, but then how do you quantify and negotiate anything past maybe something like that? Any tips, Barry?
Yeah, a couple. One is, of course, I like the conditional split, which is here are some metrics, and if we can hit this, What is it that I'll get for doing it? And I'm not sure what the value is, but we can measure the value ex post. Here's the way in which we might go about valuing it. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen now, but can we agree today on what the metrics will be for either what my raises will be or what my bonus will be? Another tool I'm a big fan of is the yes if rather than the no unless. You're going to ask your boss or the head of HR to go out on a limb for you. And they want to know that if they do that, they're going to be successful. And so the yes if means that if they go ahead and do what you're asking, they are actually going to be successful in getting you, as opposed to having you use them as a negotiating tool to get a better gig somewhere else.
I have a comment here from Catherine, actually, who says that emotions will never be emotional if Goliath is not in the room. Interesting comment. How do you agree? What are your thoughts, Barry? Emotions will never be emotional if Goliath is not in the room.
So some people accuse me of being the Mr. Spock of negotiation, in the sense of whatever the Vulcan. And I'm trying to bring logic into negotiation to combine it with emotional skills. And I think too little logic has been brought to bear. One of the other sayings I have is fight fire with water, don't fight fire with fire. And one way to bring down the temperature, bring down the emotion, is to have this logical principle framework of the pie. So that's, I think, one way to handle emotions in negotiation.
You know, you're a professor at Yale. Is there anything that you see your students do negotiate or anything that you notice that they negotiate a lot of that has sort of impressed you in your years of, maybe negotiating an extension to the due date of an assignment or negotiating a higher mark on a test?
Yeah. I would say
they're not very good at it.
I would say the point I really want to make is the place where they fail, which is I love my students. They're smart, they're empathetic, they want to make the world a better place. But when they negotiate, they often start acting like jerks. And the reason is they get scared. Their cortisol level goes up. They take stereotypes from what they read about in fiction. They're worried about being taken advantage of. And one of the challenges, if you'd like, is that, one, I don't want you to be a jerk. And if you see the other person acting like a jerk, maybe they're actually a good person underneath, and they're just also not knowing how to negotiate. So bringing out this framework of the negotiation pie can help people bring their true empathy and IQ to bear and actually make them the type of negotiators they want to be.
Before I let you go, Barry, one last question. How much of your hand should you expose, should you show during negotiation?
I think people are too often thinking negotiation is like a Miranda warning. Everything you say can and will be used against you. Look back at the negotiation with Edward over the domain name, right? By revealing what the BATNA was, the 1300, we saved a huge amount of time because right away he comes from 2500 down to 1100. Now people are afraid if I say my alternative, my BATNA is 13, I'm going to pay $12.99 or $12.90. The answer is no. I'm going to insist on splitting the pie. And so I'm less worried about revealing my BATNA in a world in which we are going to be splitting the pie.
Barry, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you on the show today. I want to end on this very quick note from Egwu, who writes in the stream. When we're talking about David Goliath negotiations, he says, David wins more than most people realize. So I like that. Barry, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
Have a great Pie Day.
Happy Pie Day.
Thank you.
That was Barry Nalebuff. He is the author of the wonderful book, Split the Pie, A Radical New Way to Negotiate. Highly recommend. And also a professor at Yale. And thank you for everyone who put your comments and questions in the stream. You can continue the conversation here. You can check out some of the other awesome conversations happening on the platform to the right of your feed, or if you're on mobile, you can just click into the search box. Have a terrific day, everyone. This has been LinkedIn News Live. I'm Nina Melendez.